So far, more than 200 awards have been presented, highlighting innovative and creative projects, programs, educational efforts, and research in the field. The winners are not only from the United States, but they're also from Canada, Colombia, Ireland, Pakistan, Spain, the Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. So tonight, we're going to be hitting the safety high notes as we pay tribute to two healthcare organizations that have expanded the use of technology to improve patient safety. We also will be honoring our Lifetime Achievement Award winner who has focused her career on helping support healthcare practitioners involved in unexpected clinical events. Our featured guest speaker this evening is someone who has herself been a second victim, involved in a Sentinel event, and is now a passionate advocate for system-based improvement. Before I formally introduce her and we begin on stage conversations though, I would like to recognize the sponsors of our event. You can find them in your program booklet. Without their support, the Cheers Awards program would not be possible. I would also like to recognize a few of the honored guests in our audience. With us tonight are some of our former Cheers Awards winner, and first and foremost, our own President Emeritus, Dr. Michael Cohen. Right? We also have Mary Baker, representatives from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, representatives from the GETSA, or Global Enteral Device Supplier Association, Patty Kinley, Mark Newman-Slider, Barbara Olson, representatives from Sharp Healthcare, Tim Lenderman, and Joe Ryan. We also have with us tonight several members of the ACRI senior leadership team and staff. So if I can have Dr. Marcus Shaw-Baker, President and CEO of ACRI, stand please. And together with all of our senior leadership team and staff, if you guys can stand up and be recognized. And last but not least, if I can have the ISMP staff members who are in attendance, please stand. Ladies and gentlemen, these are a part of our small, mighty ISMP team that has been out there supporting you all. So thank you for the applause. And now if I can have Lisa Sheroff, Jordan Ruffo, Danielle Simmons, please stand. Okay, these are the three ladies that have put their heart and souls tirelessly planning tonight's event. We would not be here without them, so thank you for the applause. So before we get the keynote conversation underway, I want to let you know that there will be a special announcement at the end of tonight's award ceremony. So please stay with us. It is something you would not want to miss.
I know.
And now, let us begin tonight's event. As you know already, RaDonda Vaught is a former nurse who was criminally prosecuted for a fatal medication error. She has a moving, compelling perspective regarding the human side of medication-related mistakes and their effect on everyone involved. RaDonda's story has had an incredible impact on the healthcare community. When ISMP offered a webinar on the criminalization of medical errors in the wake of her conviction, we had more than 3,000 registered, close to triple our normal registrations. Many of you in the audience may have read about her case. It was widely reported in the news that vacuronium was accidentally withdrawn from an automated dispensing cabinet instead of Versed and administered to a patient who later passed away. RaDonda self-reported the error and provided a lot of detailed information to help prevent similar mistakes in the future, but was charged and convicted of criminally negligent homicide. ISMP and many other healthcare organizations spoke out in support of RaDonda and against the criminalization of human error prior to her sentencing, where she was granted a judicial diversion with 3 years of probation. Now please join me to welcome RaDonda on stage. So RaDonda, first of all, thank you very much for being here tonight with us. There's lots of people who's here just to hear you speak tonight, and for also have spoken about the need to talk about these difficult events and find ways to move forward and learn from them.
Thank you.
I wanted to start a conversation with a few questions, but I do want to make sure that if you don't feel comfortable answering any of them, please feel free to let me know.
I am an open book.
Thank
Learn
you.
from my mistakes.
So my first question is, following your conviction, ISMP has written an in-depth article about your case in our newsletter, and both ACRI and ISMP have issued together a public statement. Did you know what happened at that time? And if so, what did that kind of support mean to you? And what other support, I guess, did you receive as well?
Well, initially, ISMP was the only organization that came forward to say anything about this. No one was willing to take any stand. ISMP was the only organization that was willing to take a stand and look at the facts of the case and discuss it transparently and really willingly dive deep into this very messy and uncomfortable, tragic situation, to look beyond what was just hard to talk about and easy to judge, and actually say, well, there's a right and a wrong way to move forward. And I think we need to think about what that right path looks like and what we could learn from this, and maybe there's a better way. I am eternally grateful for that.
Thank you. Did you receive any other support after that?
Yes, there were an enormous amount of people in the healthcare community, nurses, a lot of pharmacists, because I think that this very closely relates to their field. So many people were so forward about similar errors or similar mistakes, things that had happened in their career, and they felt very close to the situation. It hit a little too close to home for more people than I could have ever imagined, and they were very quick to show up and be supportive, all across the country, across the world. I have boxes of letters from people that reached out, and that was very humbling and an enormous resource for me, to move forward and do something different with this. Recognize that this hit home with more people than I ever thought it would.
Well, I'm glad that is part of your healing process.
Thank you.
So, as you know, ISMP also strongly believes in creating just culture in healthcare, a workplace that recognizes human error is inevitable and an intentional failure, and that it is not a behavioral choice. We do not choose to make the errors, and we are just fallible. And as I always say, whenever there are humans involved in the process, there will be errors, right? So we know that we embrace just culture. Embracing the just culture really means that organization has to look beyond the person and really look into the infrastructure and the processes and redesigning the system. So if you can speak a little bit about what systems, if it would have been in place, could have prevented this really tragic error from happening.
Well, I think the biggest thing that came out of this for me, sort of an aha moment, was I probably talked to a few people, you may have heard this, but we had just launched this new version of Epic at our facility, and there were some things we were figuring out. And so one of the things that I was able to put together to really figure out was some time frame errors that were just defaults that sort of led to delays in this. And I knew, and I was able to recognize those things throughout the criminal investigation of looking at documents, but it wasn't really anything that I ever got the opportunity to talk about with anyone who could do anything about it, because now I was silenced in the middle of a criminal process that led on for years. And that was frustrating, that there was no one to talk to and there was no one that I could give this information to. And it was also frustrating to see this facility that I held in such high regard not say this politely, they just let me down. There was, it was just a clean cut and then nothing. And I was so disappointed in the way that they handled that. I expected more, not for myself necessarily, but for the overall situation. I expected a little bit more there. You know.
So what would you have expected to happen?
I would have expected there to have been a little bit of support for not just myself, but some of the other people that could have been involved around this, because it wasn't just me. You know, there were other staff there that witnessed this. You know, my brand new nurse orientee, the radiology folks that were working there, and upon being let go, I had this huge weight of, I literally just killed a patient. And I just got told, well, you know, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And again, I was so lost, and I didn't know what to do, just to sit and wait for the Board of Nursing to call, and that took 9 months. I was very lost. I was very lost, and I had worked at this facility because I thought they are leaders. They are a beacon for what we are supposed to be doing right. And I know that we're not all perfect, but we're looking for guidance, and we're looking for institutional practices to help make us better and safer and to learn and improve from. And it just wasn't there at all in my case.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Now, what kind of systems in the workplace, looking back with what you've done, taking medication, the vecuronium out of the ADCs, and then going ahead and reconstituting it and administering to the patient, what kind of safeguard would be something that you think would be helpful if it is in place to prevent your errors from happening?
Well, I think you guys actually talked about a lot of things. It was in the CMS report, well before this happened, published a paper in 2016 talking about literature suggestions for, what was it? Oh my gosh, it's losing me. Paralyzed by mistakes. And I was surprised again at the number of people who, even from that facility, were not familiar with this, but, you know, instituting a lot of the things that we already knew could have made practices safer regarding paralytics, because they are the highest risk of sentinel events to occur with just this one tiny category of medications.
Right. Now, my understanding is that barcode scanning was also not available at the
Barcode scanning
radio
was not
station.
available. There was no second requirement for a person to scan or put in their identification as a second witness. There was no warning on the screen regarding this being a paralytic agent, having, you know, physician and equipment ready for immediate intubation. None of those things that I had seen before or after when pulling any kind of paralytic were there. Probably the only thing I recall was the stop sticker that would have been on the clear label, but again, that's on probably 40% of the drugs that we accessed on a regular basis, if not more. You know? So there were not things in place that I had been used to, and that I have also seen afterwards at other facilities. They were not there.
Okay, thank you. Now, the other questions I have is because ISMP constantly, always regularly receive and hear about these close calls and serious events sometimes. And we continue to encourage people to report these errors and close calls to us so others can learn from that. Now, after your error was being criminalized, what would you tell your fellow nurses and other healthcare professionals about disclosure and reporting errors?
I mean, we still have to do it. You have to do it. You don't know whether or not you can affect a change, but you can't go home at night knowing that you knew something and you didn't, because that doesn't do anything for you as a practitioner. It doesn't do anything for our patients. And at some point, whether we all like to admit it or not, it's a high likelihood that we're going to be the ones sitting in that bed, or sitting in that office, or sitting in the ER needing care. And I feel like we all owe it to ourselves and the people that we're caring for to do the right thing. We cannot let what started with, my one incident and has now been played out over and over again, this trend of criminalizing healthcare workers for mistakes. We cannot let that become a normal. We have to use our voice and we have to speak up. We have to hold the systems accountable for improvements, and the only way that that's going to happen is for us to acknowledge these mistakes when they occur and really do our due diligence and do the right thing, to slow down, to look into it, to find out what we can do to fix things or change things.
So no regrets about what you've told?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Now, is there any other things you would have done differently after the event?
Oh, I would have hired an attorney. It's like, just find someone you trust and give them your $500 as a retainer. Just have that person on speed dial.
So you did not have an attorney?
I did not have an attorney. No, I spoke with every investigator from the Department of Health, the Board of Nursing, the facilities investigators, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and I did not even entertain the idea of getting an attorney until after I bailed myself out of jail.
Oh my gosh. So getting an
Protect
attorney
yourself
from the beginning.
from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, because the attorneys, and even if you are still employed by your facility, this is not, I'm not throwing anyone a bad light here, but the attorneys that are hired by the facilities are there to protect that facility's interest, and it's important that they have their interests protected. But that's not your attorney, and that attorney does not represent you. There is a difference. So if you were to find yourself in a situation, you would need representation.
That's great
So
advice.
it's unfortunate, but you do need to understand the language of the law, how it applies to you and your standards of practice, and how that can be translated into the different areas of law: administrative law, civil law, and criminal law, because they're all very, very different.
Yeah, so can you share with our audience in here what you've learned that from, I guess, from the beginning when you were disclosing everything to now that you've gone through the entire system and understanding what that all means? How would you have say things differently, or?
You mean in terms of being transparent?
Right.
It's hard for me to say that I would have said things differently. I definitely would have paid someone to advise me of what my legal rights are before I went and said anything. Because at the end of the day, if I can't do what's important and I can't do what's best with the information that I'm saying it, inherently the criminalization issue, yeah, it got a lot of attention, and hopefully things will get better as a result of this, but I think they got really bad before they're gonna get better. And if we could have avoided that, that would have been really good. I think that would have been productive. So in that essence, would I have said anything differently? No. Would I have paid someone to advise me of what my rights were legally and maybe given me some direction to know and to understand, when I'm talking to someone of privileges? I would have wanted to know that.
Okay. Now, I've heard a very moving story about how you find some of your closure at some point. Can you share it with our audience in here?
Yes. So about 3.5 years after this incident occurred, and I gave the medication to Ms. Murphy that ultimately, ended her life. I was in a Tractor Supply in Gallatin, Tennessee, and I had an encounter with a young man who was working there. After about 5 minutes of conversation, I came to realize that that young man was Charlene Murphy's grandson.
Oh my goodness.
He recognized who I was before I recognized who he was. And he told me who he was. And he was so incredibly kind to me. That was the most humbling experience in my life. And without having made the mistake of taking his grandmother's life, I would have never been given the opportunity to experience what it means to truly be humbled. And ultimately, he just told me that his grandmother would have forgiven me, that his family did not hold this against me. They had forgiven me with time, and that I just needed to take care of myself. That was the beginning of me being able to start a healing path, and it was well before either of the court cases were closed, but I needed that, and I think he needed it too.
Well, I've heard the story once, and it still brings tears to my eyes,
Every
so
time.
thank you
And I
for
see
sharing.
this young man on an almost regular basis, and every time I see him, he makes it a point to go out of his way to say hi to me, to ask me how I'm doing. And there is something about that, words can't describe what that means to someone. And I have told him multiple times, he just doesn't have he doesn't know clue the impact that he's had on my life.
Well, that is very comforting to know that the family has all forgiven you, and yet our criminal system is not really. And unfortunately, I've heard that you have asked to reinstate your license, your nursing license, and it has been
What I
declined.
asked was for the Department of Health to reconsider their decision, maybe to allow another hearing. And that was based on having both of those investigations, one that I've never been privileged to see the results of, the one that was closed, and then the very stark change in the decision to revoke my license after the second one. But that was actually denied last week. So to the Tennessee Court of Appeals, we will go next.
So it's incredible that the family has definitely forgiven you and seen that this is a human error.
Yes.
And yet,
But
our
with that
system is
said,
not.
I will not ever practice nursing again. I think I want people to understand this. I'm on an abuse registry in the state of Tennessee for the rest of my life. I will never hold a professional license. So that's this case, continuing with this administrative court case. Again, it's not about me. It's about holding people accountable. And if there is a Department of Health in the state of Tennessee that is going to protect patients and the public from us as practitioners, as facilities, as providers, then they also need to be accountable for holding these investigations in the highest regard and to truly make decisions based on facts and what is important. And it shouldn't take a prosecutorial decision and a dismissal and then another claim that something may have happened for us to make decisions. Because if I had truly been out to hurt someone, this would have been 3.5 years that I would have been allowed to do it.
Right. Correct. Yes.
I think that's important.
So now, I think some people in the audience might have known that now you're a farmer.
I am.
Are you enjoying what you're doing?
I do, yeah.
And how are you doing? Did you feel like you finally gotten closure, or are you still on your journey of closure?
I mean, I feel a little more positive about each day. Now getting away from the criminal court cases has really helped a lot, because not knowing what was going to happen with the rest of your life is kind of difficult. To wake up every day and think, gosh, I might go to prison at some point when this goes to trial, when this pandemic ends. I don't know what's going to happen. That weighs on you a lot. So having that off of my plate and allowing myself some time and being able to talk to people in situations like this has been really helpful, because I'm giving the information to people and they're doing things with it. And that's making an impact, and that's something I'm very grateful for.
Great. Well, RaDonda, I really do thank you for being so transparent and sharing your experience and your emotions with us. I mean, I know that I can speak for everyone in this room that we all appreciate your transparency and your vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage for someone to speak, and I know that it probably every time you talking about the situation, you're reliving some of the emotions and all, and it's never, ever going to be easy. So we really do thank you for coming here tonight and sharing your experiences with us. And so, ladies and gentlemen, can we give her, RaDonda, a big round of applause? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.